Zarthak had never known fear. Standing 9 feet tall with obsidian claws that could slice through starship hulls and mandibles that could crush bone like brittle glass, the Vorthak warrior had carved his legend across 17 star systems. His species had dominated the galactic rim for over 3 millennia, their very name whispered in terror by lesser civilizations. The bridge of the captured Terran vessel fell silent as Zarthak's massive form ducked through the reinforced doorway. His 4 eyes swept across the cowering alien crew, Zephyrians, Keltari, even a few hardy Stolnians, all pressing themselves against the walls in primal terror. This was how it should be. This was the natural order. But then he heard it, laughter. Not the hysterical giggling of a mind broken by fear, nor the nervous chuckle of someone trying to mask their terror. This was genuine hearty laughter, as if someone had just heard the most amusing joke in the galaxy. Zarthak's head swiveled toward the sound, his thermal sensors locking onto a small figure sitting casually in the captain's chair. The being was tiny by galactic standards, barely 6 feet tall with pale pink skin and no visible natural weapons. According to the ship's manifest, this was one of the newly discovered species called humans. The human soldier looked up at him with bright blue eyes that sparkled with mirth rather than fear. A name tag on his uniform read, Morrison J. He was still chuckling as he leaned back in the chair, completely relaxed. Sorry, Morrison said, wiping a tear from his eye. It's just, you know what you look like? You look exactly like my buddy Steve's Halloween costume from last year. He went as a scary space bug and won the contest at O'Malley's pub. He dissolved into fresh laughter. Zarthak's mandibles clicked in confusion. In 300 cycles of warfare, no being had ever compared him to a costume or laughed in his presence. His reputation preceded him across the galaxy. Entire fleets had surrendered upon learning he commanded the opposing forces. You dare mock me, soft-skin? Zarthak's voice was a low growl that had made hardened warriors soil themselves. I am Zarthak the Render, Scourge of the Outer Territories. I have ended civilizations. Morrison nodded appreciatively. Oh, impressive titles. Very dramatic. We humans love dramatic titles too, though ours are usually more humble. I'm Corporal Morrison, assistant manager of making things go boom. He gestured to his sidearm with obvious pride. Formerly of the 42nd Engineering Corps, currently of the oh shit we're about to die brigade. The casual way this human spoke about death, his own death, sent an odd chill through Zarthak's exoskeleton. The Vorthak warrior had studied thousands of species, learned to read their micro-expressions, their pheromone releases, their involuntary muscle tension. This human showed none of the typical signs of fear, submission, or even the desperate bravado that some species exhibited when cornered. Your crew will make fine slaves, Zarthak said, testing. You will watch them suffer before I end you. Morrison scratched his chin thoughtfully. You know, that's where you might run into a problem. See, you're thinking like every other apex predator in the galaxy. Big, scary, relies on intimidation. He stood up slowly, his movements casual and unthreatening. But humans, we're persistence hunters. We don't give up, ever. Persistence hunters. Zarthak's voice carried a note of curiosity despite himself. Oh yeah. Back on Earth, before we developed proper weapons, we used to hunt mammoths, creatures 10 times our size, by just following them around until they collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the biggest, not the strongest, not the fastest, but we're stubborn as hell and we never stop learning. Morrison reached into his pocket, causing several of Zarthak's weapon systems to target him automatically. But the human only pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display. See? While you were making your dramatic entrance, I was studying your ship's schematics. Standard Vorthak design, heavy armor, redundant systems built to last. Very impressive, his grin widened, except for one tiny flaw. Zarthak found himself leaning forward despite every instinct telling him this was impossible. A prey species could not know more about his technology than he did. Your atmospheric recycling system has a fascinating quirk, Morrison continued conversationally. It's designed to filter out toxins that would kill most carbon-based life forms, but it's never encountered Earth botanicals before. He held up a small green capsule, concentrated peppermint oil, completely harmless to humans, but apparently it causes interesting reactions in Vorthak respiratory systems. The warrior's thermal sensors suddenly detected dozens of heat signatures throughout his ship. His crew was already showing signs of the respiratory distress Morrison described. caused by microscopic amounts of the substance the human had somehow introduced into their air supply. When? Zarthak's voice was barely above a whisper. About 15 minutes ago, when I surrendered and your boarding party brought me aboard. Morrison's laugh was almost fond now. You see, that's the thing about humans. We don't just fight with claws and fangs. We think, we adapt. We find ways to turn your strengths into weaknesses. As if to punctuate his words, Zarthak's comm system crackled to life with reports of his crew succumbing to the respiratory effects. His mighty dreadnought, terror of the spaceways, was being brought down by plant extract. For the first time in his long life, Zarthak felt something he'd never experienced. The cold touch of genuine fear. Not of the human's weapon, not of death itself, but of the species this small being represented. A species that didn't need to be apex predators because they made everything else extinct through sheer, terrifying ingenuity. Morrison stood and straightened his uniform with military precision. Now then, I believe we should discuss terms for your surrender. And just so we're clear, the antidote is back on our ship along with my friend Steve, who's probably still wearing that scary space bug costume because he thinks it's funny. As his vision began to blur from the atmospheric toxin, Zarthak understood why humans were spreading across the galaxy with such unprecedented speed. They weren't conquerors like the Vorthak. They were something far more dangerous. They were problem solvers, and in a universe full of problems that made them the most terrifying species of all.